questions you had problem with. Yeah. So this is the one. Okay. So kindly let me know the questions, or do you want me to do the entire paper or what? Okay. So, oh, sorry to hear about that. I hope she gets well soon, inshallah. A lot of prayers for her. Till 15. Okay. So how about we do post 15, right? So if you had no problem till 15, then we'll do after 15, right? Is this correct? Right. Good to know this. Perfect. So let's start off with question 16. Okay. In 2019, the Australian government made a payment of $900 to those who earn less than 1 lakh per year, right? How would the effect of this transfer payment be described? Right? Is the effect neutral? Is this progressive? Is this proportional? Is this regressive? How could the effect of this transfer payment be described? Right, made a payment of $900 to those who earn less than $100,000 per year. Is this neutral? Is this progressive? Is this proportional? Is this regressive? So what do you think? You think it's A? I think it's D. I think it's D. Let's look at the marking scheme first and then we'll see. I think 16 is B. Progressive. Right. Right. So progressive meaning the higher the incomes, the more the income tax, right? In this case, it's a transfer payment, right? So the more you earn, the higher the tax. In the case of taxes, how the progressive thing works, the higher the income, the higher the tax rate, right? But now this is not the tax that we are talking about. It is a transfer payment. So transfer payment is given to those who are deserving, payments, financial payments made to deserving and disadvantaged people. So in that case, who earn less than this, how would the effect of this transfer payment be described? Progressive. So the lesser you get. The higher the incomes, the lesser the amount you get. Right. So let's Google search progressive transfer payment, right? I mean, progressive transfer payment is not something that we have explicitly discussed in our classes, right? So let's look at the definition that should help. Okay, this is right. To name only two of the most important functions. All right, right. And taxation, pension. Okay, this is more mathematical. I was thinking of something simple. Transfer payment definition. All right, right. Progressive federal government types of transfer payments. Right, transfer payments and economies. Virtual. Explain that. Transfer payments are taxes, also spending, progressive tax, progressive transfer payment. That's weird. Progressive transfer payment. This is the same that we came up with. The proportion of the community is too low pension to those who earn a minimum, at the minimum too high pension to those at the maximum. The problem with this combination is that it pays too low pension to those who earn at the minimum and too high pension to those at the maximum. Progressive taxation combined with proportional pensions like Germany. Oh, that's weird. Maybe it means taking taxes from the rich and giving it to the low income earners. Right. Yeah. Yeah, taking taxes and then giving it to the poor makes sense. Yeah. Payment to those who earn less than 100,000 per year. How would the effect of this transfer payment be described? Because the confusion that I'm having is that, think about this, progressive taxation is very simple and easy to explain, right? So it's something like higher the incomes that you earn, higher the amount of tax, higher the rate of tax, right? But transfer payment being progressive, this is something that I'm hearing it for the first time. Right. Yeah, I think you're right. So it means taking taxes from the rich, right? And giving it to the poor then. Yeah, progressive, right? Makes sense. Okay, the diagram shows the market for wheat, right? If the government wishes to fix the price at OP1, which quantity of wheat must the government buy? So if the government wants to fix the price at OP2, right, which is above the equilibrium price, so what quantity should the government buy to ensure that the price is at OP2? Yeah. So, right. Can you tell me? So think again, think again, think again. At the price OP2, right? Elsa, right? Think about this. At this price level, how much is the demand for the good? The demand for the good is OZ. Yes or no? The demand for the good is OZ. And how much is the supply? The supply, sorry, how much is the supply? Supply is OZ, right? So there's more quantity being supplied. And how much is the demand at this price? OX. So the remaining quantity has to be bought by the government. The remaining quantity has to be bought by the government. Absolutely excellent, right? So the answer should be XZ. The answer should be C for this, right? Let's see if it's C. 17 is C. Perfect. Let's move on, right? The next question says, as part of privatization policy, a government deregulates bus services and sell off its public sector bus services to the private sector. What is the least likely to occur following these changes? What is least likely to occur? If government is privatizing its bus services, what is least likely to happen? Bus fares are increased. Bus services company invest in new buses. Extra bus service companies enter the market. Loss making bus services are retained. When something is privatized, what is least likely to happen? D, exactly. So private companies will not want to retain loss making services, right? Right. So 18 is D. Very good, right? So they will not retain loss making businesses because the private sector businesses main objective is to maximize profit. A government decided to reduce the income tax and increase sales tax. The initial equilibrium point is shown by X. So this is X. Now on the aggregate demand and aggregate supply diagram, what would be the equilibrium point after these changes? So there are two changes that are taking place. The first one is the government reduced the income tax. So what will that do to the aggregate demand and aggregate supply if income tax is reduced and if sales tax is increasing? Income tax is reduced and sales tax is increasing. Let's see if you get this correct, right? So lower income tax means more purchasing power. More purchasing power means more consumption, right? So the aggregate demand should shift to the right, right? We know this. So from X, you move to this point. But then there's also another change that is taking place, that is increase in sales tax. So what happens when there's increase in sales tax, right? So aggregate demand will definitely shift to the right. But when sales tax is increasing, right, just which we call as GST, general sales tax or just sales tax, right? So what effect would that have on aggregate demand or aggregate supply, right? So aggregate supply shifts to the left. Very good. So from this point, it shifts to the left. So your new equilibrium should be C. Your new equilibrium should be C. So let's see if 19 is C, right? Very good. Excellent. Let's keep moving. Okay. The table shows the data for an economy, right? So from 2010 to 2014, we are shown these different values: gross domestic product at current price levels, GDP deflator, price index. In which year did real GDP decline compared to the previous year? In which year did real GDP decline, right? So do you know how you will solve this question? 9%, 20%. In which year did GDP decline compared to the previous year? So do you know how you will calculate this? Right. Okay. Don't worry about it. Let me show you. Okay. Have a look at this. And so what you need to do basically is to calculate the change. First of all, you have to calculate the percentage change in the GDP from year to year. I'll show you how that is done. And then you will calculate the change in the GDP, percentage change in the GDP deflator from year to year, and then see if there is a real change in GDP or if the real GDP increased or decreased. Now, what I basically mean by that, first, let's have 2010 and 2020. So how much has been the increase in GDP between 2010 and 2020? sorry, not 20, 2011. So between 2010 and 2011, what was the change in the real, sorry, what was the change in GDP? That is what I'm about to explain. So new value of GDP minus old value divided by old value into 100. So by this formula, you'll calculate the percentage change in GDP, right? Is this making sense? Right? Exactly. So 20%, even without doing the calculations, it's so 10%, in fact, 10%, not 20%, because think about this. So you do that into 100, it will be 10% increase. That's how you're getting me? Because 20 divided by 200 is basically 0 gets cancelled out like this. And then 2 times 10 is 20. Sorry. Right. Yeah, you were right. 10 is, sorry. What is wrong with me? 10% and then 20 of 200 would be, no, this is also being divided by, yeah, 10%. I was right. So there will be a 10% increase in GDP. Is it making sense? Right? Okay. And how much has been the increase in GDP deflated during that time between 2010 and 2011? How much has been the increase in GDP deflated? 9%. Very good. So 10 minus 9 is 1. So there has been 1% increase in the real GDP. There has been 1% increase in the real GDP compared with the previous year, right? So there has been 1% increase in the real GDP. Are you getting me? Now, if you remember, we talked about this formula. So how do you calculate real GDP? Let me show you on the whiteboard. Okay. Basically, the formula that is used to calculate real GDP is real GDP equals to nominal GDP minus inflation. Real GDP is equals to the increase in nominal GDP minus inflation. So with the GDP deflated, which is mentioned in the question, that is actually giving you the estimate for inflation rates deflator, right? So this GDP deflator that you are using in the question is actually helping you calculate the inflation rate of a country. Are you getting me? So deflator, what does a deflator means? Deflator means that you are deflating, you are removing the effect of inflation from the GDP number. You are removing the value of inflation from the GDP. Elsa, is this making sense? So the actual formula that we did in the class, that whenever you have to calculate any real variable value, you will calculate that by subtracting inflation from the nominal value, right? So to calculate the real GDP or the real wages or, real income, anything of the sort, is always calculated by removing the effect of inflation from the nominal value of that variable, right? Now, knowing this formula, let's come back. So what we are doing over here, we are calculating the percentage changes in the GDP. That is the nominal increase. That is what? That is the nominal increase. And when we subtract from the nominal increase, the rate of inflation, the overall value we get would be for the real GDP, change in real GDP. If the real GDP change is positive, this means compared to last year, this year, your real GDP was higher. But if the change in real GDP is negative, that means that this year, your real GDP decreased compared to your previous year. Elsa, this is making sense, right? Now for the next year, how will we calculate? Perfect, right? So the next year between 2011 and 2012, right? Your nominal GDP increased from 220 to 240, right? Is this correct? Was it two? Let me check once again, because this is always right. Right. So the change in was 220 to 240, and in the denominator, like the GDP deflator changed from 109 to 125, right? So we'll do the same method that we did previously exactly, right? So how much is the change? So did you do this? 240 minus 220. New value is 240 minus old value is 220 divided by old value is 220 into 100. So this turns out to be, you are saying, how much is this value? You're saying this turns out to be 9%. Okay, so this is 9% increase in nominal GDP. right? 9% increase in nominal GDP, and then you'll do the same for the GDP deflated, like calculate its percentage change. So it will be new value 125 minus old value, which is 109, divided by old value, which is 109 into 100. And that gives you 15%. So the increase in inflation was 15%, whereas the increase in nominal GDP was 9%. So when we plug in the values, nominal GDP increased by 9%. So 9 minus inflation 15%. That gives you negative 6%. This means compared to last year, your real GDP decreased by 6%. Your real GDP decreased by 6%. Is this making sense? So it should be between 2011 and 2012. In which year did GDP decline? So in 2012, the GDP, real GDP declined compared to previous year, right? So it should be B. So 20 should be, was it 20? Yeah, it was 20. 20 should be B. 20 is B, absolutely. Is this clear now? Elsa, will you remember this formula? Will you be able to do it in future? Okay. Okay, perfect. Amazing. Right. Great. Let's move to the next question then. What always happens when there's increase in consumer price index? What always happens when consumer price index is increasing? An increase in consumer expenditure, an increase in the cost of living, a reduction in the living standards, a reduction in real disposable income. A reduction in real disposable income. Increase in consumer expenditure, increase in the cost of living, a reduction in living standards, a reduction in real disposable income. Right. So what do you think? What always? Now, Elsa, you have to be very careful with the wording of the question, right? So sometimes there will be few options that are very confusing and very close options. So you have to read thoroughly what the statement is asking for and then choose your answer. So in this question, which do you think should be the correct answer? Yeah. When consumer price index rises, what is that actually showing you? What is consumer price index? Consumer price index is basically, okay. Okay, I'll come to it, right? So let me first explain you what I was about to explain you, right? So consumer price index is the method, CPI is the method that is used to calculate inflation. When consumer price index is rising, this means that there's inflation taking place in the economy, which means that goods and services are becoming more expensive in your country. When that happens, think about what is happening in Pakistan right now. The fuel is becoming more expensive. The electricity prices are going up. The rent prices are going up. There's so much happening, right? So all these things collectively determine the consumer price index of a country. So when there will be higher inflation, it will be more expensive for the people to buy the same goods that they used to buy before. Ilsa, are you getting me? Think about this. So when fuel is becoming expensive and food is becoming expensive and electricity is becoming expensive, so your consumer price index, why do we call it consumer price index? Because these are the prices that consumers pay for the basic necessities, for basic things that they consume. This going up means that there's more inflation taking place. When there's more inflation taking place, this means that the cost of living is going up. Yes, right, exactly. So C is also likely to happen. That is what I was saying when I said that you have to be very careful with the option that you're choosing. C is also likely to happen, but we can't say for sure. When it says what will always happen, we have to think about the thing that will always be true, right? Right? That is for sure to happen. And the cost of living will surely rise. So 21 should be B, right? Easy. 21. Oh. Okay, just give me a second. Let me connect it to my own thing. Just give me a second. Right. That's the problem. Settings. Just a second. Just give me a minute and I'll be with you. Can you hear me now? Elsa, can you hear me now? Do let me know if my voice is clear. Right. Hello.